Good morning. I'm Reverend Linda Susan Ulrich, and I serve this congregation as minister, and it's such a delight to see all of you here this morning. Thank you for joining us. So one of the things that we do at the beginning of our services is called Living Our Values Every Day, and it's a chance for different groups to let you know what's going on, especially in the area of social justice. And so today I would like to welcome up Melinda Tuhus, who's going to talk about Green Sanctuary.
Okay, I guess that's good enough because it's not moving. Okay, good morning. Some cities, states, and national governments and world bodies have proclaimed that we are in a climate emergency. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, is a very conservative body requiring unanimous agreement before issuing statements. They said in 2018 that we had 12 years until 2030 to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions 50% or face potential catastrophe, likely catastrophe, including feedback loops that will make it impossible to claw our way back to the beautiful, habitable planet we've known until recently. Mother Jones famously said, "Pray for the dead and fight like hell for the living." The climate news is dire, and we could give up or we could fight like hell for all the living, not just the humans, but those that fly, that crawl, that walk on all fours, and even the living earth herself. I vote to not give up. The Green Sanctuary and Environmental Justice Task Force of USNH is involved at many levels in this effort. We run tag sales and regifting sales to reduce waste and promote reuse. We support personal action through our new Tips for Living section of the USNH newsletter. We work with other groups around the state to promote in-depth education and public actions to raise awareness about the fact that environmental harms like polluting power plants and waste facilities, as well as climate harms, affect low-income and Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities first and worst. And we pressure our elected officials to take bold action on these issues. We also get involved directly in trying to safeguard our increasingly endangered democracy, because without democracy, we are really cooked. Our first tip for living was urging members to get a home energy assessment, which can save you lots of energy and money. Our second tip was on measuring your carbon footprint and how to shrink it. National governments and world bodies must do the heavy lifting to move us away from the precipice of climate chaos. But if all individuals and families who are living above their planetary allotment of resources take steps to reduce, reuse, recycle, and regenerate, that will help a lot. You can just Google carbon footprint calculator to get a variety of different options, but they all do the basic job of showing where and how you are using up and most likely going over your allotment of the Earth's carbon budget and suggest ways to cut back. Green Sanctuary meets on the third Monday of the month at 6 p.m. on Zoom. You are welcome. You can email us at greensanctuary@usnh.org with questions or to get involved. And check the newsletter for upcoming Earth Day events. Thank you.
Good morning to all of you who are joining us in person or by Zoom. I am Lisa Anderson, and today I'm joined by our newest worship committee member, Lorraine Dowdy. We're serving as your worship associates. Welcome to each of you, old friends and new, young and old. You are an essential part of our worship today. Whether today is your first or your 1000th Sunday with us, we are stronger because you have joined us. We are one people of many beliefs, many origins, sexualities, and genders. We are all growing, all learning, all loved. And you are welcome just as you are. The service has been created in part by our amazing musicians, Jeff Duma and Erica Schroth, Bill Braun, Sylvia Liptick, and our USNH choir. As always, enormous gratitude to Rob and Mary as well. In addition to Reverend Linda Susan and Jesse, I want to extend a special welcome to our stewardship ambassadors, the beloved Kyle family. Now for a few announcements. Directly after the service at 11:30, you are invited to the Covenantal Relation Committee's in-person movie discussion in the social hall on the movie, The Best of Enemies. This was a film made in 2019 based on a true story of civil rights activists Ann Atwater and C.P. Ellis, who was a local leader of the Ku Klux Klan. They very reluctantly chaired community meetings about school desegregation. We've asked that you watch the movie before today, so it's only a discussion, but all are welcome. And really, if you haven't seen the movie, it's amazing. Reminder of our COVID protocols, please wear your mask inside the USNH building. And after the service, we invite you to enjoy refreshments outside. Newcomers, as always, are welcome to stop at our welcomes corner after the service. And now, I kindly ask you to ensure that your electronic devices are securely settled into, in the words of Jim Peters, worship mode. I love that. As our service continues with a call to worship.
The Avowal by Denise Levertov. As swimmers dare to lie face to the sky, and water bears them, as hawks rest upon air, and air sustains them, so would I learn to attain freefall and float into Creator Spirit's deep embrace, knowing that no effort earns that all-surrounding grace. So the words that accompany the chalice lighting are mine. We light our chalice every week as a way of coming into community, not only with each other, but with Unitarian Universalists across the country and indeed across the world. We light this chalice for all that keeps us afloat, aloft on difficult days. We light this chalice for the spark of hope that ignites our living. We light this chalice for the flame that lights our way. We light this chalice for the warmth of community that embraces us over and over again. That's right.
Covenant lies at the center of how Unitarian Universalists gather in community. We are united not by a particular set of beliefs, but by the promises we make and how we are together, how we will treat each other, and how we will attempt to mend relationships when we fall short of our aspirations. Every week, we recite together a brief version of our covenant. I encourage you to read the full covenant on the webpage. While the following words express our intentions in writing, our true covenant lives and breathes in our actions. Please join me now in reciting the words that appear in your order of service or in the chat on the live stream. We covenant together to create and nurture a culture of respect and kindness, and to engage in the spiritual and everyday practice of loving more generously. To this end, we will strive to be open, value differences, listen deeply, use kind language, speak our truths, work with conflict, seek humor and joy.
Good morning. Beginning last week, we returned to full congregational singing, so I invite you to rise in body or in spirit as we sing hymn 301 in the gray hymnal, Touch the Earth, Reach the Sky.
Our message for all this morning comes from what 14-year-old me decided if there was ever going to be a Unitarian Universalist scripture, this would certainly be one of them. So our message for all this morning comes from the scriptures of Douglas Adams, from Life, the Universe, and Everything. These are instructions on how to fly. There is an art, or rather a knack, to flying. The knack lies in learning how to throw yourself at the ground and miss. At this point, I should say that this is the first message for all in my time at USNH that should probably come with a disclaimer. This is for contemplative purposes only. Kids, do not try this at home. Adults, do not try this at home. Now, pick a nice day and try it. The first part is easy. All it requires is simply the ability to throw yourself forward with all your weight and the willingness not to mind that it's going to hurt. That is, it's going to hurt if you fail to miss the ground. Most people fail to miss the ground. And if they are really trying properly, the likelihood that they will fail to miss it is fairly hard. Clearly, it's the second part, the missing, that presents the difficulties. One problem is that you have to miss the ground accidentally. It's no good deliberately intending to miss the ground because you won't. You have to have your attention suddenly distracted by something else when you're halfway there, so that you're no longer thinking about falling or about the ground or about how much it's going to hurt if you fail to miss the ground. It is notoriously difficult to prise your attention away from these three things during the split second you have at your disposal. Hence, most people's failure and their eventual disillusionment with this exhilarating and spectacular sport. If, however, you are lucky enough to have your attention momentarily distracted at the crucial moment by, say, a passing pair of legs or tentacles, or a loud noise in your vicinity, or by suddenly spotting an extremely rare species of beetle crawling along a nearby twig, then in your astonishment, you will miss the ground completely and remain bobbing just a few inches above it in what might seem to be a slightly foolish manner. This is a moment for superb and delicate concentration. Bob and float, float and bob. Ignore all consideration of your own weight. Simply let yourself waft higher. Do not listen to what anybody says to you at this point because they are unlikely to say anything helpful. They are most likely to say something along the lines of, "Good God, you can't possibly be flying." It is vitally important not to believe them, or they will suddenly be right. Waft yourself higher and higher. Try a few swoops, gentle ones at first. Then drift above the treetops, breathing regularly. Do not wave at anybody. When you have done this a few times, you will find the moment of distraction rapidly easier and easier to achieve. You will then learn all sorts of things about how to control your flight, your speed, your maneuverability, and the trick usually lies in not thinking too hard about whatever you want to do, but just allowing it to happen as if it was going to happen anyway. You will also learn about how to land properly, which is something you will almost certainly mess up, and mess up badly on your first attempt. There are private clubs you can join which help you achieve the all-important moment of distraction. They hire people with surprising bodies or opinions to leap out from behind bushes and exhibit or explain them at critical moments. Few people will be able to afford to join these clubs, but some of you might be able to get temporary employment at them. Bearing all that in mind, I would like to invite two things to happen now. First, I would like to invite all the children and young people to throw themselves at their classes to see if we can, get hit with some wisdom. And I would also like to invite the Kyle family forward for a stewardship testimonial. So please let us welcome the Kyle family, and children, let us metaphorically fly away.
Good morning. We're the Kyle family. I'm Betsy.
I'm Jason.
I'm Nolan.
Take your mask off, please.
I'm Zachary. 6 years old. 9.
We've been members of USNH since 2017. We're here this morning because we'd all like to share our thoughts on why USNH is important to us and why we hope that you'll also continue to support this special place in this year's stewardship campaign. So long ago, Jason and I both agreed that some type of spiritual connection was something that we wanted as a foundation for our family as our boys would grow.
We also agreed that we wanted something very different from Catholicism, speaking from our own experiences?
So we did some research and found USNH as a possibility. We both felt a strong connection from the first service that we attended,
Which just happened to be right after a certain president was inaugurated.
Since then, we can't really say enough about the amazing connections that we have formed here. Whether it's through services, serving on committees, doing service work with the kids service team, gatherings that we've been a part of, the buddy program and the friendships that it's brought, visits in real life and visits via FaceTime chats, special holiday letters that we've received and given, and even dog sitting.
So all of these connections have been the core reason for continuing to support USNH. I might have a little bit more of the foundation part responsibility, but still, the people here are the real reason, right? We've done many. They've done many kind things for us and wonderful things to support us in our life and journey as a family here. And as a family, we'd like to reaffirm the loved theme that guides this year's stewardship campaign.
So we also asked our children as to why USNH is important to them. So they would like to share their thoughts with you all as well.
So many kind people go here. There are people who are always glad to see me. That makes me feel both happy and thankful. And because so many people here have been kind to me, I have done more kind things for others as well. USNH is a peaceful place for me. I like to listen to the people talk and play music. It makes me feel like I am part of this church. I really like the buddies who have been very kind to me. It makes me feel happy, and I like the fun things I do with people here.
Thank you for allowing us to the opportunity to share with USNH. It's such a special place for us, and one that we hope you'll continue to support as we do. Thank you.
So this is a time in the service when we turn to joys and sorrows. I'm so glad we have the Kyles. They're the joy that I have today. And now for the sorrow. 20 years ago, this community, the USNH community, helped me settle some very dear friends from Belarus. They were immigrants, as they made a new home in Hamden. There was no committee, just an incredible outpouring of generosity as USNH members found apartments, jobs, and furnishings for this family. I did one chalice lighting, and that was it. I ask you now to hold them in your hearts as they struggle with the devastating impacts of Putin's war. They find themselves separated in 4 countries right now: Belarus, Poland, the US, and Switzerland. It's a kind of free fall when the world changes in an instant. Let us also remember those around the world who've been forced from their homes, suffering the loss of loved ones and the destruction of their communities in the face of war, violence, and climate change. Now, on a somewhat happier note, Bill Braun joins dozens upon dozens of us, fellow patients of Kathy Gould, in congratulating her on her years of service to the medical profession. Kathy has been an empathetic and thorough provider of care, and we will miss her as she starts her well-earned retirement from her career. We send her our deep gratitude and our fervent good wishes for her next chapter, which begins next week. Now close your eyes if you like. These words come from UU Minister Marta Valentin's Book of Meditations, A Long Time Blooming. It's a prayer for peace and healing. Spirit of life all around us, you have gathered us together in a swirl of healing wind. Take this newfound apprehension, an unwelcome shawl, heavy upon our shoulders, and make of it a comforter, soft and warm and trusting, in which we may rest our weary souls. Every day we awaken, may our first thoughts and vision be peace in the eyes of our sisters, brothers, cousins, who also see the peace in mind. And from this gaze into each other, may the peace of our hearts heal one another. Let us hold a moment of silence. Amen and blessed be.
I'm grateful that we had the entire Kyle family up here to talk about their commitment to pledging, because it's a stark reminder, a beautiful reminder, that we're here not just for us. We are here for the generations to come. We are here for those who are growing with us as we grow as adults, so the youngest among us grow as well. So I hope if you haven't had a chance to make your pledge yet, please do that. You can do it online. You can do it, there'll be a table afterwards. You can, if you need a waiver, please just say, I need a waiver. It's as simple as a checkbox. One of the other ways that we hold this community is with weekly giving as well. This is not just our commitment that we make, but out of an abundance of gratitude for this community. There's a wonderful metaphor a friend of mine once said about filling your cup until it overflows from your saucer into the saucer, and then give from the saucer. Now, she was talking about kind of your energy and, not emptying yourself out. But I think right now that cup is what's essential for this congregation, and that's your pledge. And what overflows with gratitude, that is what we give in the weekly offering. So I invite you after the service, there'll be people who will be able to collect your giving. If you're online, you can go to usnh.org and look for the donation button there. You can also send a check to 700 Hartford Turnpike, Hamden, Connecticut, 06517. However you give, whenever you give, however much you do or don't give, please know that you are valued just for being here, just for existing, and just for being part of this community. Thank you for your generosity in giving of yourselves.
Surrender like a duck, Mark Nepo. Beneath what I try to see is all that I need. It was years ago, but I remember it clearly. I was walking along the shore of a lake in the middle of the day, and there in the sun, a good 10 yards out, was a duck, curled into itself, asleep. With its slick, tufted head tucked into its body, it bobbed peacefully in the lapping of the water. This little scene undid me, for it was an ultimate lesson in trust. Without any intent or knowledge of itself, this little duck, asleep in the womb of the world, was a deep and wordless teacher. If only we could surrender this completely to the mystery of life, we could be carried and renewed. It was obvious that the duck would wake and swim its little patterns on the water, but this little creature's ability to let go completely allowed its time on earth to be filled and saturated if just for a few minutes, with a depth of peace that only surrender can open us up to. Only rarely have I let go this completely, yet those moments of total surrender have thoroughly changed my life. When struck with cancer, I somehow fell from the ledge of my fear and entered the operating room like this little duck. It was a threshold to the other side. When lonely and afraid to reach out, I have somehow collapsed repeatedly into the ocean of another's love, and it has cleansed my weary heart. And in my search now for wisdom to live by, I stumble at times and surrender what I think I know so completely that I find myself adrift in a deeper way that is neither wise nor unwise, but simply life affirming.
Ever since I was a kid, I've wanted to go skydiving. Now, I understand that the idea of jumping out of an airplane while it's flying at 10,000 feet above the ground goes against every ounce of self-preservation that evolution has stitched into us. I really do understand that. And it's an especially curious thing because I'm afraid of heights. Yet there it stayed on my bucket list year after year. I was far more worried that I would die before trying it than while trying it. So when the opportunity to go skydiving cropped up while my partner Emily and I were traveling, I had to go. Now, the first time you skydive, it's a tandem jump, which meant that I was strapped to the front of someone who already knew what he was doing. He was in charge of checking the equipment and deploying the parachute, so I didn't have to worry about any of that stuff. I was mainly tasked with two things: putting on an ill-fitting one-piece jumpsuit, goggles, and a leather aviator cap that had me humming Up in the Air Junior Birdman. And of course, going through safety training. For example, as you leave the airplane, you position yourself so you're flat on your stomach with your arms out, elbows bent, which helps you catch the air and come into equilibrium during free fall. We also went over what to expect when the chute opened and how to do the landing. While I was doing that, Emily got to practice deep breathing. Because if anything did go wrong, she'd be the one on the ground watching. I, on the other hand, was giddy. This thing I dreamt about for decades was finally happening. Eventually, about a dozen of us loaded into this little Cessna prop plane. My jump partner and I got in last because we were slated to go first. The motor was loud and the space somewhat crowded, but the view was stunning. Green and gold fields below us, tiny trees off in the distance, mountains and glimpses of ocean further still, and a bright blue sunny sky crowning it all as the plane climbed up and up and up. I have to admit, when someone opened a small window and the wind came rushing in, I started to wonder about my life choices that day. And then when the plane door slid all the way open and I was right there, and with nothing in front of me, I did have a moment of, why did I think this was a good idea? But we were first, and it was time to go. And I didn't want to turn back. I'd waited a long time for this. So we leaned forward and fell into the air. And it was incredible. I felt profoundly connected to everything. Timeless and weightless and boundless. As though I were part of the air itself. Like a flat stone sinking slowly through placid water to the riverbed below. The free fall lasted only maybe 15 seconds, but I had never felt so at home in the world. in order to create that experience of surrender to the air, I had to have profound trust in many things. The professional skydiver I went with, the equipment, the pilot, the physics of terminal velocity. I also had to put time into learning the skills to make it all work. But the gift on the other side was touching mystery. Many musicians have a similar experience. You plug away at scales and refine your technique. You practice the phrases over and over so that they get into your muscle memory. You clarify details with the conductor or the other musicians to shape the piece in a way that feels true to its essence. And then during the performance, you let all of that go and just surrender to the moment by moment unfolding of whatever emerges, trusting your instincts and the creativity you invested along the way. Resistance to our creativity is how theologian Henry Nelson Wyman defines sin. Even if we're not trying to resist or we're unaware of our resistance, we might be working against the good. For him, evil is about a lack of responsiveness to the world and an unwillingness to be transformed. So if I'm struggling against the conductor during a concert because I'm so bound by the way we did it in rehearsal, or if I'm falling through the air but refusing to acknowledge that feeling of connectedness, then I'm shutting out the holy. I'm not awake and responsive to the world. Sense of control has its place for sure, but when we hold onto it too tightly, there's a cost. We're usually left with nothing in our grip except unnecessary suffering. The disciplines of playing scales or preparing to skydive or engaging in a spiritual practice ultimately aren't about control. They're about weaving together a container of trust that can hold the risks we take. A container we can use in service of letting go of control, of surrendering to something larger than ourselves. These disciplines help mysteries start to live inside our bodies, the way a skeleton acts as a rigid scaffold for our tender flesh to hang upon. Islam, which means surrender, builds this embodied connection to the divine into its very fabric. Salat, the prayers that happen 5 times a day and are one of the 5 pillars of Islam, are not simply words that you think silently to yourself. You also kneel and stand and bow as you're able. Before you start, you perform wudu, the ritual cleansing of the hands, face, and feet. That orientation towards the holy gets into muscle memory. And we can't always know whether surrender will lead to the outcome we hope for. I mean, even though I'd learned how to land smoothly at the end of the tandem jump, I couldn't make it happen. And we had quite the ungainly return to Earth. If the tumble when first leaving the airplane was expected, this one was not. Thankfully, nothing was bruised but my dignity. But if I'd broken a leg instead of merely looking ridiculous, I wouldn't have been grinning quite so widely as I made my way back to Emily. I might even have lost touch with that experience during freefall. It isn't always easy to recover when our trust is shaken. But if we're open to practicing the skills that build trust up, we get stronger for the next time. in much the way that falling down teaches a toddler something about what it takes to walk. At a congregation I once served, every Sunday we'd recognize that we're blessed by those who face their final days with curiosity and courage. We're blessed by it in part because in observing that process, we also rehearse letting go. We also practice trust and engage our willingness to be transformed and surrender to something larger than ourselves. A basketball coach I once knew said, "Practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes permanent." Just as in sports or music, there's a cumulative effect in our spiritual disciplines as well. So what are we embedding in our lives? Are we digging channels that let creativity flow ever more easily? Or are we becoming entrenched in fixed ways of being? Are we open to being lured by joy? Or does busyness rule the day? Even when surrender doesn't involve jumping out of an airplane, it can feel like we're putting our lives on the line. And I think that's because, in a certain sense, we are. In the day-to-day practice of releasing control in order to experience the joy or peace or courage on the other side of it, we're also learning on a subtle level how to surrender to the inevitability of death. We're getting to touch mystery. If the analogy between dying and these living moments of surrender holds any truth at all, then it moves me to think that as I leave this plane of existence, I'll enter a space that feels timeless and weightless and boundless, as though I'm part of the air itself. Amen. Ashe, and blessed be.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Friends, we have one lifetime, maybe more, who knows really? But we know we have this one. We know that it is sacred. We know that it is precious. So how are we rehearsing? How are we living? How are we surrendering to things larger than ourselves in service of life? These are questions where mystery lives. And whether or not we ever find answers, we can still take leaps of faith. Go now and be a blessing to this beautiful and broken world. With courage and with kindness, let us be those blessings. Amen, and blessed be.